Thank you all for joining us. I am really excited to see you all at the first webinar of the year for the New York Proton Center's Patient Alumni Network. My name is Melissa Weisstuck. I'm the center's marketing manager, and I'm part of the team that coordinates the Alumni Network. Today's topic is what should I eat? Nutrition tips for a healthy new year. Our speaker, Rachel Padilla, will focus on evidence-based nutrition tips to support your overall health and without restrictive rules or fad diets. Just a few points before I turn it over to Rachel. Our alumni network is for you, so please do let us know if there are other topics that you would like to learn about. We are planning to organize webinars throughout the year. And also, if you're not already a member of the Patient Alumni Network, please join us, join the Alumni Network. You can do that by visiting the alumni page on the NYPC website, nyproton.com, and we will put that address in the chat for you to copy. I have a few housekeeping items for today. This webinar is being recorded. The purpose of recording is so that we can post it on the alumni page of our website, and it also will be residing on our YouTube channel. To maintain your privacy, the presentation will be conducted in webinar mode. So therefore, please send us your questions, and we hope you have lots of questions for Rachel. Send them to us via the chat feature, and Rachel will answer them after she completes her presentation. We will be stopping the recording right before we begin taking questions. So the question and answer period will not be on the recording. So now I'm really excited to introduce you to my colleague, Rachel Padilla. She is the New York Proton Center's registered dietitian. Rachel has a master's degree in clinical nutrition from New York University. She's been a dietitian for the past 12 years, 10 of them spent in oncology. Prior to joining the New York Proton Center, she worked at Montefiore Hospital for 9 years. She has also worked with eating disorder patients in a private practice. Rachel does not believe in dieting, but rather in implementing healthy and sustainable practices. So I'd like to turn it over to Rachel. And again, thank you all for being here today.
Yes, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you being here. So I'm just going to jump right in. So my objectives for today is just getting you to understand the nutrition guidelines, being able to build a balanced and nourished meal, and just giving you some helpful nutrition tips for the season. So just some things to keep in mind. So the general guidelines for nutrition are going to be just to try for a combination of starches, proteins, and healthy fats in each meal to fuel and energize your body. All the macronutrients are all very important for all of us. The American Cancer Society has guidelines to help cancer prevention, which also can be used all the time for everyone, which including at least 5 fruits and vegetables a day, or 2.5 servings of each, choosing high fiber foods versus refined foods, choosing lean proteins, decreasing fat, and just like I said, the same guidelines helped us protect against cancer can also help in returning. So I'm going to go more into these guidelines, but it does just the general outline for you just to keep in mind as we go through. So as of 2 weeks ago, we have new dietary guidelines for Americans. I personally am going to leave my opinions to this diagram myself. I find it very confusing, but as of 15 years ago, we did have something called the plate model, which I think is a little bit easier to see and to visualize what a plate can look like and should look like for our meals. So this is actually adapted from the plate model that used to be, but this is from the American Institute for Cancer Research. And as you'll see, it has 2/3 of your plate or more being your fruits and vegetables and whole grains, and then 1/3 or less being animal protein or proteins. And that's trying to adjust from what our plate model was. This is another example of what the plate model is. And so this one also has a similar distribution, 1/4 of the plate being whole grains, 1/4 of the plate being healthy protein, and then half of it being fruits and vegetables. And then the United States, we're in Olympic times coming up on Friday. So the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee also puts out their own plate for training and weight management, which again, you'll see is a very similar setup. And then this was the plate model that we used to have as of 2 weeks ago prior. So what it looked like is half of your plate being fruits and vegetables or vegetables, a quarter of the plate being the starches, and a quarter of the plate being the protein. And it could have been adapted, or it can still be adapted to different cuisines as well. And what I'm going to do going forwards is talking a little bit more about what our plate model looked like, because I think it's a great way to visualize and get an idea of what a healthy, balanced meal could look like and should look like for all of us. So talking about the protein portion. So as you'll see, it's look at that quarter of the plate, or if you're looking at the American Institute for Cancer Research guidelines, it's about that third of a plate. So what we want for you to have is proteins, right? So chicken, fish, eggs, nuts, seeds. They can be dairy products. So it could be animal-based, but it could also be plant-based proteins. Meat nowadays has a larger percentage within the new American guidelines. However, research has shown us, and especially with the cancer research, we don't want to have more than 3 servings of red meat a week. So red meat is beef, lamb, pork, veal, and goat. So really keeping in mind those 3 meals a week for the red meat, if that. If you can eliminate it or limit it even more, great. And so again, these are different protein types that we can look at. So you have your animal-based proteins like the eggs, the chicken, the fish, the meat, the turkey. And then you also have plant-based proteins, which are just as good. So you have lentils, you have chickpeas, you have edamame, and you have quinoa, and you have different rice. Keep in mind that there's such a thing called complete proteins versus incomplete proteins. It's not something that you need to worry too much about. A lot of plant-based proteins become complete proteins when you combine 2 of them together. So rice and beans make a complete protein, which is exactly what our body needs. Or having different types of soy products are a complete protein as well. So a little bit more about meat and beans and going lean on the protein, right? So again, the American Cancer Society recommends the lean protein, and as does the American Heart Association. So we want to have lean meats being not so high in fat, and we can include these higher protein foods. This again is talking about limiting the red meat to not more than 18 ounces per week, which that's really what we kind of identify as the 3 times a week. Processed meats like ham, bacon, sausages, salami, and pastrami, it's really recommended to avoid it. And included in that is also cold cuts or deli meats, because that does have some negative association for potential cancer risk as well. So if you're able to avoid it, that's the most recommended thing. And then when thinking about cooking your meats or your poultry or your fish, we want to avoid cooking at high temperatures and over open flames, because that also can potentially create some carcinogens. And baking, broiling, or poaching are the more suggested ways of or means of cooking. We can also season our meats in different ways. So, some of the concerns for seasoning, a lot of them do have some salt intake or higher salt. So we can use fresh herbs and spices just again to keep it a little bit on that decreasing the sodium, healthier side for us. Now I want to get into the carbohydrate portion. Carbohydrates unfortunately get a bad rep in the nutrition world or in the health world sometimes, and they really shouldn't be, because they're a really important source of our immediate energy and they are good for us. So when you're thinking about our plate, we again want that about quarter of our plate to be filled with those starches. And so starches include our potatoes, our rice. It could be our beans mixed with the rice because beans are one of those combo things, but it's also our breads, our pastas. Those go in those carbohydrate sources. With that said, carbohydrates also can be more of the starchier side, right? So anything that converts into sugar are considered carbohydrates. So our fruits are a carbohydrate as well, but again, it's about portion sizing for them. And then for our starchy vegetables, like our potatoes, our sweet potatoes, our corn, our peas, these also get converted. Vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, have some carbohydrates in them, but they're very low in the carbohydrate, like the grams of carbohydrate, sorry, and the grams of carbohydrate. So they're not things that need to be of the highest concern when you're thinking about that plate model, that those non-starchy carbohydrates are going to be on that other half of the side of the plate. But you can see carbohydrates also include things that have sugar naturally and then things that are sugar added. So like our sodas, our chips, our pastries, those are things that are still carbohydrates. So they're not, they're just things to keep in mind, and I'm going to get a little bit more into it, right? So when we're choosing our carbohydrates, we want to think about more whole grains, and we want to think about things that have a little bit higher fiber intake in them, because that is what helps us decrease inflammation in our colon and helps us stay fuller longer and helps us decrease inflammation in our whole body, and they're good for our just digestive health as well. So whole grains you'll think about as oatmeal, barley, bran flakes, cereal, brown rice, whole wheat bread. These are things that are going to be considered more whole grains compared to the refined grains, which are going to be like the pastries, the high sugar products that you often find are a little bit more refined. They're made with white flour. These are things that are lower in fiber, and they can also contribute to inflammation and weight gain. So therefore, they're recommended to be limited, not necessarily eliminated, but just limited. Overall, the amount of fiber that we aim for per day is about 25 to 38 grams of fiber. You also get fiber in our skins of our fruits and vegetables as well. So whole grains are a great option, but you can also get it from our fruits and vegetables, which leads me to the vegetable portion. So half of the plate model is of that non-starchy vegetables. So again, the starchy vegetables are considered a carbohydrate. That's going to be the potatoes, the sweet potatoes, the corn, the peas. Those are the starchy vegetables, and they really go into that quarter of a plate within that plate model versus the other half of the plate. So some examples, and this is only a short list of them. You can choose many different examples of non-starchy vegetables, but these are going to be some cauliflower, broccoli, kale, spinach, tomatoes, lettuce, collard greens, Brussels sprouts, onions, cucumbers. There's a lot of different vegetables out there that you can choose from that can go into that half a plate. So what we recommend for fruits and vegetables are eating a wide variety. So this statement goes, eat the color of the rainbow. So every single fruit and vegetable or every single color actually has a different vitamin or mineral associated with it. So what we encourage, or what I encourage people to do, is to eat all the different colors just to create that overall benefit and health for us. So for example, tomatoes are really rich in lycopene, which is an antioxidant that protects against prostate cancer. Or red peppers and oranges are the highest in vitamin C, which can protect again against esophageal cancer. There is a very strong evidence about eating all these different colors of the rainbow and eating all these different fruits and vegetables and helping us get in all those minerals and vitamins that our body needs in order to sustain and keep ourselves healthy. So what the plate model looks like doesn't necessarily have to be that half a plate, quarter plate, like really split up when you're looking at it. What I want to show you in the next couple of images are what the plate could look like, but maybe in a different format. So for example, a grain bowl, right? You're still getting the carbohydrates. You can still get the vegetables and you're still getting a protein. Or it could be looking a little bit more like that, but with fish now instead of having chicken, or with the rice without the rice and beans, or with broccoli rabe. Or it can look like some pita chips and some ratatouille and some hummus. Or it can look like some eggs and toast and then still peach and peppers, or even a sandwich, right? There's ways to make this distribution of the macronutrients or in our proteins, carbohydrates, and vegetables fit in different meals and different styles. So you'll see you'll have the carbohydrates in the bread, you have the vegetables in here, and you have the protein from the cheese, so there it doesn't need to be necessarily in that plate. So when thinking about planning, meal planning, um, what I encourage people to do is choose a meal pattern that fits for you, right? There's, again, not one size fits all for everyone, in terms of meals, in terms of eating. So maybe it's having 3 meals and 1 and 2 snacks. Maybe one day you want to have 3 meals and a snack and a dessert. Or maybe you want to have 3 potentially slightly larger meals and not have any snacks, especially if you're having one that is potentially a little bit more indulgent compared to what you would otherwise have. So really choosing a meal pattern that works for you and works for your schedule. But as you see, the common theme, I recommend people typically having 3 meals a day. So what can a breakfast look like, right? So, these are just the next couple of slides are just going to go into what potential meals could look like in terms of really trying to create that balance in it. So I apologize. This is a little bit of a wordy slide, but it's just so that way you can kind of get in the mindset of what the options could be. So choosing a lean protein, choosing a starchy, high fiber carbohydrate, and then choosing a fruit potentially could be what a breakfast looks like. So for example, having 2 eggs and then having a slice or two of multigrain bread and then having a banana with it. Or having yogurt and then having maybe some cereal, like Raisin Bran cereal, and then having fruit with it. Or having, say, some peanut butter or on a mini bagel or an English muffin. And then again, potentially having some fruit or even having a vegetable with it, right? You can have eggs and a Western omelet or something like that. So just really getting in that habit of including a protein, including a carbohydrate, and then if you can, including a fruit or vegetable. And then thinking about lunch and dinner, it's a very similar thought process that I want you to kind of go through, right? Choosing a meat or a protein, choosing a starch, and then choosing either a fruit or a vegetable or even potentially a dessert if you so choose. So for example, choosing some grilled or baked chicken with having a cup of cooked pasta, with having some vegetables or some fruit with it, or having a veggie burger and having a baked potato, or having some, if you decide it's your red meat night, then having some ham or having some roast beef and then having a roll with it. Just getting into that habit of having this balance within each meal is going to be important. And so again, very similar for dinner, right? Having some fish or having some rice with it. And then if you choose to have a fruit or a milk or dessert, having something like that. Maybe you want some berries, or maybe you want some ice cream, or maybe then having some, again, having some turkey and then having some rice, or having some bread and then having a fruit. But just something to keep in mind, the non-starchy vegetables are definitely something that we want to include into each meal if you're able to. So a little repetitive, but the starchy vegetables are going to be the potatoes, the sweet potatoes, the corn, the peas. Those are the highest um, in starch for the vegetables. So those are more in the carbohydrate grouping versus the non-starchy vegetables. So really trying to incorporate these non-starchy vegetables as much as possible. Again, for the vitamin and mineral intake, for the fiber, it's all going to be really important for you. And then if you choose to have a snack, these are some options to think about, right? So 1 to 2 snacks a day is great. Trying to keep it lower in calories in the snack field, so less than 300 calories if possible. And then trying to have a higher amount of fiber. Again, fiber is always great to include. It helps us stay fuller longer. It helps our digestive health. It's all very important. And then if you're able to, including a protein with a carbohydrate or including a fat with a carbohydrate. These carbohydrates are good to have again because they give us that immediate source of energy. Our body utilizes them first prior to going to our fat stores or our protein stores in our body. So just some things to keep in mind. Just for eating well every day, a plant-based diet is recommended to decrease inflammation and reach a healthy body weight for everyone. But plant-based does not mean vegetarian or vegan, right? It does mean that we're having more of the fruits, the vegetables, the whole grains and legumes, while you can also still include lean proteins like fish or poultry, right? It just might mean that more days out of none, you are having these plant-based proteins versus the animal-based proteins, or you are having a heavier day in terms of the fruits, vegetables, and whole grains and legumes. So if you're plant-based, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be vegetarian or vegan. Something else that I just want to have you keep in mind is eating in the season is going to be a great and helpful tip for you. So eating in the season means purchasing fruits and vegetables when they're picked at peak harvest time. So the benefits of doing that is that the fruits and the vegetables have a higher composition of the vitamins and minerals compared to items that are picked and shipped before they are ripe. A lot of the times it is more cost efficient. You can support your local farmers by doing that, but then also you minimize the environmental pollution from the shipping of the food. So we're in the dead of the winter months in this cold front that we're having. So just things to keep in mind about what winter produce really looks like, right? So fruits, we still have apples and pears, though we're not as strong in them right now. But for vegetables, we have beets, we have cabbage, we have carrots, we have mushrooms, we have sweet potatoes, turnips, sprouts, rutabagas. We have a lot of different great vegetables, of which most of these are non-starchy. So it's just great to try to include them into your intake for the month or for these winter months. And you might be able to find them more easily and readily available in the grocery stores as well. So just some practical tips for success. If you're ordering takeout, one thing to help, and a lot of the times our portion sizes in the States are going to be very large. So put your dish out on a plate. So put your food that you have ordered onto a plate and put the containers in the kitchen or away from you, right? Because if it's right next to you, you might be more inclined to grab at it or eat more of it. So if it's further away, then you get to really assess your hunger and your satiety cues after you've made your plate of food or finished your plate of food. Same thing with cooking. If you're cooking, try to divide it into portions. If it's just you, and then immediately freeze or save the rest for another meal in the refrigerator for another time. Or, portion out for your family and then like have the other side in mind for another meal or for another time. The other thing is to identify your problem eating style. So if you had problems eating, trying to think about what are really my problems? Like, Am I eating a lot at parties in particular? Or am I eating little meals throughout the day, but really just picking? Or do I eat really quickly? Or do I sit at my computer? Or do I go to restaurants really often? So trying to really pinpoint for you, what is your main problem or what do you feel like is your main issue with eating? And then trying to problem solve around it. And around your habits by creating if-then statements, right? That's going to be one of the things that might be helpful. So, like, if I go to a party and there's a lot of appetizers, then what will I do? Okay, well, then maybe I'll just take one of each of them. Or if I know I'm going to have a very busy afternoon and I'm potentially going to have a lot of work to do at night, then what will I do? Maybe I will take a pause for my desktop and I will just freeze everything and step away from a moment to be a little bit more mindful with my eating. Or if I know I'm more likely to eat a lot of snacks, if if I don't have a big meals, then what should I do? Okay, well then maybe I'll set a time for my lunch or my breakfast so that way I know, or my dinner so that way I know like, oh, I'm having dinner at 7 o'clock. It's 6:30. I should not be having this munching snack right now. Something else just to keep in mind is you want to eat before you get super hungry or before you're hungry, right? There's um there's such a thing called a hunger scale. If many of you have been through treatment here, and we give you the pain scale often, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain level? Well, the same with hunger. On the scale of 1 to 10, what's your hunger level? Are you like one so famished you're ready to eat anything in sight? Or are you 10 that you're so full you feel like your pants are gonna pop? And we really want to avoid these two extreme states by eating a little bit in the middle time. So really trying to eat when you are not super hungry, but also when you're not super full. We want to stop at that time.